Clif, this is Gemini again, and
Sure,
I wanted you to give us your insight into the quickening of time and the thinning of the veil of awareness and manifestation. Are they driven independently, or is there a common causality?
You can think of them as being independent, but of course there's no such thing as independence within the materium. The materium exists as a result of the pulse that determines its flow. So causality results from the ability of those items within the materium to move and shift, and thus there is an apparent connection between cause and effect, and the result of the vibration changes within materium, how do I want to say this, are also driving, hang on a second, I'm getting some, okay, I guess we're all right down there. Getting all kinds of disruptions on my machine at the moment, so we may lose a connection here.
Okay.
All right, hang on. Yep. Hello? Am I back?
There he is, yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I've gotten some kind of, I don't know what it was at the BIOS level coming on in. Where were we at? What were we discussing? Sorry.
We were talking about the quickening of time and the thinning of the veil and whether they're independent or common causality.
Right. The issue is that the mind, as a subset of consciousness, is separate from the materium, but it's expressing itself through the materium. So the quickening of time and the separation of the veil or the thinning of it relative to our awareness are probably different sides of the same coin, so to speak. It's a multifaceted coin because there's a lot of other stuff going on. But the way I'm looking at it now, Terence McKenna was quite correct, and we're seeing a compression or coagulation, as the data has it, in time stuff coming into our universe, and we're repeating all of these patterns. So I guess it's really cool for Buddhists because once they see the patterns, they can step out of them and go on to the next level. But a lot of us are repeating stuff that we really could do without.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Hi, Clif. It's Lolly again.
Hello.
Hi. In contrast to what you've picked up in terms of the sheeple having a less willingness to know, on the forum, I've noted recently on the forum that the contemplation and involvement with your reports has brought about a recent shift in language and in reported experiences. Specifically, I've noted an increase in both the reporting and experiencing of psychic events, spiritual experiences, connections, and sync winks with each other, both on and off the forum. I see it as simply as an evolution of consciousness and more humans stumbling upon or actively seeking a better working knowledge of human potential, while at the same time disconnecting from illusory distractions, making different choices. So I'm wondering whether this trend is increasing and may in part contribute to the data wall that you're picking up. Can you talk about that?
I actually thought about that. One of the suppositions we had a couple of years back was that, maybe the data gap was a result of everybody actually getting into a point of becoming telepathic, and they just don't use the internet anymore, or psychicness became so common as to be not worth reporting, that kind of thing. And of course, that's still a semi-valid explanation. But if what you're experiencing at the level of the linguistics, though, is the same effect that you get as an individual, like when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you see nothing but that car everywhere. And it's that sensitization. Now, what people do with sensitization in terms of their awareness usually is that they let it fade and they go back to their old ways. What you have in the forum is a concentration of it, a crucible. And so basically it's like Jay Widener discusses an initiatory process. And the reports, in a curious way, are not the gatekeeper, but the introduction to people taking an initiatory process to joining the crucible, where they will then be highly sensitized to what's going on, which further allows their awareness to focus on it. And then from that point on, they're given the option of developing it into a skill and mastering it, or not, as they should, and they in circumstances should choose. Make sense?
Well, Yeah, it does. I'm actually noticing a lot of people are actively working on developing those skills. So
yeah, that's kind of really freaky because I'm seeing that independent of our reports in all different kinds of places. And this is merely one example that happens to resonate with a small subset of the general populace as a whole. And we see the same kind of language that you guys express within your crucible. We see those archetypes showing up in the Russian, for instance, around the I can't think of the whole Cedars deal, and there's this other big dancer woman that has sparked something of an awareness phenomena in Russia as well. And so we're just seeing it pop up all over the place. I think of it as a way of universes balancing out against the fascism. Universe knows a giant wave of fascist repression is coming. It doesn't like that in a general sense because it's anti-balance. Fascism always leads towards extremes. And so it promotes its own method of getting rid of that in the sense of the counter wave already forming at the time that the fascism reaches its most powerful point. You know, that's the way it always is. Look at through history. Resistance is always just really getting organized and getting good just as the power reaches its pinnacle and is ready to topple anyway.
that makes sense. Okay.
I love that poem, by the way, Ozymandias, and its history in the various different versions. And they all come back to the same thing of, you know, statues in the sand being viewed from a distance. The cycles always repeat. So that part is relatively easy to forecast. We don't need much of the data. Again, I'd like to think that the fascism is really the cause of the data hole, because then it's within that environment, individuals will potentially thrive even if my particular system is shut down. Make sense?
Right. Yeah, I'd like to think that that's what the cause of the data wall is too, not the death of millions.
Correct.
Or some, yeah. Is it possible that the Schumann resonance of the Earth is impacted by some major event, thus creating major changes in the brain functioning of humans? I would suspect that such an event would also cause dramatic and abrupt changes in the functioning of the matrix as well, the failure of electrical grids. Do you think that's possible?
Certainly. Yeah. And in fact, it's the Schumann resonance is measuring crackling in the ionosphere, basically. So it's certainly possible that it can be altered. I don't think it needs to be altered in order for there to be the changes in mental state, though. And I think that there are a great many energies around that we have no clue about that will be impacting our mental energies and getting us resonating in a whole lot of different ways that we will maybe interpret as mental illness, or may be so interpreted as mental illness by the social order that and the Schumann resonance could stay absolutely as it is. And yet let's not link them as to a necessary cause.
Okay.
And in fact, our data for years has been going on about the sun disease and people walking around, and not just disease of the sun, but the wider meme of disease here on Earth caused by the sun, disease here on Earth being promulgated, promoted, et cetera, grown by the sun, and including all the way up to people just walking across the street one day and then going into some kind of catatonic shock or state and sitting there drooling on their own shoes until someone comes and helps them out of the street. Not a good image, and the fact that we'd had it for so long has a tendency to make us think that its visible impact will be quite high, and we're entering that period now. That brings back that whole spectrum issue. My little experiment with the sun here. I used to have a very sophisticated solar observatory that was somewhat annoying to my wife because it was a bunch of scientific crud lying around on the deck, some of rather dangerous, involving gnomon made out of spikes and stuff. But I studied the sun for a number of years locally, so I was prepared for all different kinds of things, and I've observed two large changes in it, one through the spectrum and one through a polarity filters experiment that I have set up. So if we want to go all the way back as a small diversion to people like Gurdjieff and their concept of the solar luneus, that while the moon affects us and makes us into lunatics on the night of the full moon, and there's all of the demonstrable evidence for that. He was of the opinion that the sun was far more powerful in its impact on humans, and that the cycles were much larger, and that's why we didn't see them coming, and that they would just come along and kick us in the butt, and we'd all fall down. And I think we're in one of those particular periods at the moment.
Okay. Now, do you think that a certain percentage of humans would have a real adaptive response to those incoming energies and the changes?
Sure.
Yeah.
It must be so, simply because of the diversity that humans betray already.
Okay, thanks so much.
We know,
Clif.
for instance, that 2% of the people cannot help themselves. They must believe in God, no matter what, because they've got the gene for it. 6% of the population
Sorry, Clif,
is
you're dropping out.
electromagnetically
Clif,
sensitive.
we've lost you, Clif. We've lost you.
Hello? Hello?
Didn't hear that last bit.
Yeah, the interruptions came in again. Still with me?
Yep.
Okay, then here's what I was saying. 2% of the population is known to have a gene structure that forces them to believe in a God and a power structure. 6% of the population of humans is known to be electromagnetically sensitive. 3% is known to be highly sensitive to the upper range of those electromagnetism in the form of they always get cancers when exposed to microwaves. Some 11% is some degree chemically sensitive, and so on and so on. So there's no reason to suppose that there is not a group that is in a gene group that will be adaptive to what we've got coming to us. Now, curiously, there was another thing that we discussed with Mel about the skin disease for children that shows up drawing pictures on their bodies, as well as this group of individuals that will arise as planetary healers, if you will, over these next few months, and that these individuals somehow have a unique relationship with the new solar light we've got. There were indications within the Global Pop, the little tiny bit I happened to read through a cross-link in the Space Goat Farts about these guys having a relationship with blue light that offers this concentrated or condensed, compressed healing sort of thing, and that we'll see them emerge relative to the children with this skin disease that actually read something like a nasty plague. Again, all of it going back to the idea of the multiple dimensionality of the language around the idea of the sun disease. So not only will we see the grander, grosser effects within the sun itself, but all the way down to the microcosm, because it cannot be otherwise. We're all sharing the same vibratory experience within the same materium. And the description of the matrix I find to be very limiting, because it assumes that there's a grander universe beyond the matrix, and really there isn't. It's only existent at the level of vibration, and to believe otherwise limits your view of what's actually going on, I think.
Thanks, Clif.
Hi, Clif. Doris here from Vienna, Austria.
Oh, how are you doing? Guten
yeah.
Tag? No, Guten Abend.
Yeah, servus. I'm now switching the topic a bit to alien war memes. The alien wars has been a set of linguistics that have been in your data for a very long time. I believe 2002 or 3. Lots
Correct.
of movies
Correct.
out about aliens and alien invasions currently. We have also spoken to Joseph Farrell about ancient cosmic wars and Stan Deu and the Nephilim. Since your last run and with how reality is manifesting around us today, could you please give us your opinion on, or speculation on how you believe the alien wars linguistics will manifest in reality when it reaches its near-term peak in October?
I'm of the opinion that the manifestation in the language will create in the mainstream media images that we will see as local farmers with shotguns right next to their door, and their wives and children in the house at night out of fear of having to deal with pesky aliens. Now, the language has always described it thus. It, of course, doesn't tell us whether that's just how people are made to think, or in fact if that's really what's going on, and there's incident after incident of this occurring, where people actually have to shoot at the aliens and so on. But